Somewhere in the world right now, there is someone lying awake at 2 o'clock in the morning, staring at a phone screen, unable to sleep because they are carrying a burden they have never shared with another person, a regret they keep replaying, a fear they cannot escape, a question they are afraid to ask. And at that exact same moment, somewhere else, a simple 3-minute video is quietly traveling across the internet. No expensive production, no dramatic soundtrack, no famous personality trying to capture attention. Just a priest sitting in front of a camera, speaking a message so simple that people stop scrolling and listen. Within a single day, that short clip reached thousands of people. But what made it unusual was not the number of views, it was the type of reactions it created. The comment section became filled with people saying things they normally kept hidden. They were not simply leaving compliments or passing along a religious message. They were sharing personal struggles. They were admitting they had almost given up. They were saying they had been searching for something they could not explain, and somehow this message appeared at exactly the moment they needed it. One person wrote, "I needed to hear this today." Another said, "I was ready to walk away completely, but I found this before I did." Someone else asked, "How did this reach me at exactly the right time?" That is what makes messages centered on divine mercy so powerful to many people. They do not depend on impressive presentation. They do not require a famous face or a carefully designed campaign. They simply rely on an idea that has remained meaningful for generations. The idea that hope can still reach someone even when they feel they are too far away to find it. The message itself was not new. In fact, it was connected to something written many decades ago in a small, handwritten diary belonging to a Polish nun named Sister Faustina. Her writings described a message of divine mercy that she believed was revealed to her through encounters with Christ. Yet somehow, when that message was explained in simple language for a modern audience living with guilt, anxiety, comparison, and loneliness, it reached people in a completely different way. This is the story of that message, why it connected with millions of people, how it found its way into the lives of those who felt forgotten, and why there is a possibility that the reason you are watching this right now is because this message speaks to something deeper inside you as well. Because the surprising truth is that this story is not really about a viral video. The video was only the doorway. The deeper story is about a question that countless people quietly carry. Is there a point where someone has gone too far? Is there a mistake too serious to be forgiven? Is there a person too broken to be welcomed back? And the message that spread so quickly offered a response that challenged the way many people had come to see God. It suggested that mercy is not something reserved only for people who have already fixed themselves. Instead, mercy exists precisely because people cannot fix themselves completely on their own. The story began in a way that many important things begin, quietly. A short video was uploaded online. There was no major advertising campaign behind it. No team of experts analyzing trends or creating strategies to make it popular. It was simply a recording of a talk about divine mercy, the kind of message that had been shared for years in churches, retreats, and small gatherings. But something about the timing, the wording, and the way the message was presented caused it to spread far beyond what anyone expected. Soon, thousands of comments started appearing. But these were not ordinary reactions. They were not just people writing, "beautiful message," or "God bless." They were deeply personal responses from people revealing parts of themselves they usually kept hidden. One person explained that they had been considering abandoning their faith completely, but this message reached them at the moment when they were ready to leave. Another person shared that they had avoided church for more than 10 years because of something they had done in the past. They believed their mistake was too serious and that forgiveness was no longer possible for someone like them. Another viewer simply wrote, "I no longer believe in coincidences." To understand why this message affected people so deeply, it is important to understand what it was actually saying. It was not a message focused only on rules, punishment, or trying harder to become worthy. It was not telling people that they needed to become perfect before approaching God. The message was almost the opposite. It presented mercy as something that reaches toward people before they have everything figured out. It described mercy as something offered not because someone has earned it, but because someone desperately needs it. This idea comes from the writings of Sister Faustina, a young Polish nun who lived during the early 20th century. Her life appeared ordinary from the outside. She was not a famous scholar, a powerful public speaker, or someone with influence in society. She spent her days in the simple routines of religious life: prayer, work, service, and obedience. Yet within those ordinary circumstances, she recorded extraordinary experiences that became the foundation of the Divine Mercy devotion. The central message repeated throughout her writings was clear: God's mercy is not a reward given only to those who have succeeded. It is a gift offered to those who recognize their need for it. This was a completely different way of thinking for many people. Some had quietly developed an image of God as a distant judge, someone watching from far away, keeping track of every failure and every mistake. They imagined a relationship based on earning approval rather than receiving love. The viral message challenged that image. It described God not as someone standing with crossed arms, waiting for people to prove themselves, but as someone who moves toward them, like a parent running toward a child who has fallen, not first asking whether the child deserved help, but responding because the child is hurting. That simple picture seemed to break through the defenses of many viewers. And perhaps the reason it connected so strongly is because of the world people are living in today. Millions of people are surrounded by constant communication, yet many feel more alone than ever. People share their achievements publicly, but hide their struggles privately. They see carefully edited versions of other people's lives and begin comparing them to their own unfinished stories. The result is a generation of people carrying silent feelings of inadequacy. They wonder if they are successful enough, attractive enough, disciplined enough, good enough, even spiritually worthy enough. Into that environment came a message that said something completely different. You are not beyond mercy. You are not the one person who cannot be forgiven. You are not excluded from hope. The message was not saying that mistakes do not matter. It was not ignoring the seriousness of wrongdoing. Instead, it separated two things that people often confuse: the seriousness of the wound and the willingness of the healer. A doctor who takes an illness seriously does not abandon the patient. The seriousness of the condition is exactly why treatment is needed. In the same way, the message explained that human brokenness is not a reason to run away from mercy. It is the very reason mercy exists. For many people, this changed the way they viewed shame. Shame tells people to hide. It tells them to disappear until they become better. But this message offered the opposite invitation. Bring the broken places into the light, because those are exactly the places where healing can begin. And that idea continued spreading. The video was shared across different platforms. People translated parts of it into other languages. Viewers created their own short clips and passed the message along. What began as a simple recording became something much larger. But behind the viral moment was an older story, a handwritten diary Created by a young woman most people would never have noticed during her lifetime, carrying a message that would eventually reach millions. And understanding that history reveals why this message continues to affect people decades later. The story behind this message begins with a person who, by ordinary human standards, seemed completely unlikely to become known around the world. She was not a person with wealth, influence, or public recognition. She was not a famous theologian or a religious leader with a large following. She was a young Polish woman named Sister Faustina, living a quiet life inside a convent, carrying out simple responsibilities that most people would never consider remarkable. She cooked meals, she worked in the garden, she completed daily tasks. She lived a hidden life that appeared insignificant from the outside. But it was within that hidden life that she recorded something that would eventually become one of the most recognized messages of mercy in the modern Catholic world. Her diary was not written with the expectation that millions of people would ever read it. She wrote because her spiritual director encouraged her to keep a record of what she experienced. He believed that something important was happening and that these writings should be preserved carefully. Over a period of several years, she filled pages with descriptions of prayer, spiritual experiences, and what she believed were conversations with Christ. Again and again, one theme appeared more than any other: mercy. Not mercy as a distant idea discussed only in theological books. Not mercy as a word people repeat without thinking deeply about it. She described mercy as something personal, urgent, and available to every person regardless of their past. The message was not that sin does not matter. It was not that human choices have no consequences. Instead, it focused on what happens after someone recognizes their mistakes. It focused on the possibility of returning. One of the most important ideas connected to her writings was that mercy is not meant only for those who already appear righteous. It is especially meant for those who know they are wounded, lost, and in need of help. This idea challenged a common assumption many people carry about their relationship with God. They imagine that they must first become better before they can approach Him. They believe they need to clean up their lives, overcome every weakness, and fix every mistake before they are allowed to return. But the message of divine mercy presents a different order. It says that people do not come to mercy because they are already healed. They come to mercy because they need healing. That difference may seem small, but emotionally, it changes everything. For someone carrying years of guilt, regret, or shame, the idea that they must improve themselves before seeking forgiveness can become an impossible burden. They keep waiting for the perfect moment when they feel worthy enough to return. But if mercy is something offered precisely because people are imperfect, then the door is already open. One image from Sister Faustina's writings became especially connected with this message. It showed rays of light flowing outward from the heart of Jesus, one pale and one red, traditionally understood as symbols of water and blood, representing cleansing and life. Below the image were 5 simple words: "Jesus, I trust in you." Those words became central to the devotion because they expressed the entire message in a way anyone could understand. They were not complicated. They did not require advanced knowledge or years of study. They represented a simple act of surrender. A person in any condition, at any moment, could make that prayer. Someone who was confident could say it. Someone who was struggling could say it. Someone who had failed repeatedly and did not know how to begin again could still say it. That simplicity is one reason the message continued to connect with people across different generations. However, The journey of these writings was not immediate or effortless. Like many private spiritual experiences throughout history, they were approached carefully. Church authorities examined them with caution, partly because of questions surrounding translations and interpretation. Some early translations created confusion because certain phrases did not accurately communicate the meaning of the original Polish writings. The Church has always approached private revelations carefully, recognizing that they must be evaluated before being widely accepted. Eventually, after further examination and more accurate translations, the message was officially recognized. The devotion spread internationally. A feast day connected to divine mercy was established, and what had once been the private writings of an unknown nun became a spiritual practice embraced by millions. This history helps explain why the viral video connected with people so strongly. The message was not something created overnight by someone looking for an emotional topic that would perform well online. It was not a modern invention designed only for social media. It was an old message reaching a new audience. A message written decades earlier was suddenly being heard by people living in a completely different world. A world of smartphones, constant comparison, digital pressure, and emotional exhaustion. There is something deeply meaningful about the way this message traveled through history. A message about the forgotten and the overlooked came through someone who herself was overlooked. A message about mercy reaching those who feel unworthy came through someone who had no worldly status or influence. And decades later, that same message resurfaced through a simple, low-production video that many people initially ignored. The connection was almost poetic. The video also helped many people understand something they had heard before but never truly grasped. Many viewers said they had heard the phrase divine mercy throughout their lives, but they always understood it in a general way. They thought it simply meant that God forgives. But the deeper message was much stronger. It was not a weak version of forgiveness that ignores wrongdoing. It was not an excuse to pretend that choices do not matter. Instead, it was closer to rescue. The writings connected to this devotion describe human failures honestly. They do not minimize the seriousness of sin. They recognize the damage that wrong choices can create in a person's life and relationships. But the response to human failure is not rejection. It is an invitation to return. One detail from Sister Faustina's writings especially stood out to people who researched more after watching the viral clip. She described being told that the greatest sinners have a special reason to trust in mercy because they need it most. This idea directly challenges one of the strongest beliefs people struggling with guilt often have. They think, my situation is different. My mistake is worse. Other people may be forgiven, but not someone like me. It is one of the most powerful forms of isolation shame creates. It convinces people that they are the exception. The message of divine mercy directly confronts that thought. It says that the person who believes they are too far away may actually be the person who most needs to hear that the way back is still open. This explains why the video reached people who normally would not watch religious content. It did not feel like a lecture aimed at correcting them. It felt like an answer to a question they had been silently carrying. A question many people never say aloud. Am I still loved if people knew everything about me? The message answered with a clear response. Yes. Not because mistakes are meaningless, not because choices do not matter, but because mercy exists exactly where human weakness exists. And this is where the message began connecting with a younger generation in a unique way. Because while the original writings came from decades ago, the struggles they addressed are incredibly modern. The world has changed dramatically since Sister Faustina wrote those pages. People today face pressures she could never have imagined: constant online comparison, the pressure to appear successful, the fear of being exposed, and the feeling that everyone else is managing life better than they are. The outside world often encourages people to create a perfect image, but behind many carefully edited profiles are people dealing with anxiety, loneliness, insecurity, and private struggles they rarely reveal. The viral message entered that exact space. It reminded people that their value was never supposed to come from maintaining a perfect image. It challenged the idea that love must always be earned, and for many viewers, that was the part they needed most. Because the deepest pain many people carry is not always caused by one major failure. Sometimes it comes from years of quietly believing they are not enough, not successful enough, not worthy enough, not loved enough, and the message of mercy offered a different foundation. It suggested that a person's worth is not something they achieve through performance. It is something they receive before they ever begin proving themselves. That shift from trying to earn love to learning how to receive it became one of the main reasons this simple video reached so many people. And to understand why it affected a younger audience so strongly, we have to look at the emotional world they are living in today. The emotional environment many people are living in today helps explain why a message about mercy could spread so quickly and connect so deeply. This generation has grown up in a world where almost everything can be displayed, measured, and compared. People share their best moments publicly, but their struggles often remain hidden. They show achievements, celebrations, vacations, and successes, while quietly carrying fears, doubts, and personal battles that no one else sees. This creates a unique kind of pressure. It is not always connected to one specific mistake or one major failure. Instead, it is a constant feeling of falling behind, a quiet belief that everyone else is doing better, becoming better, and handling life more successfully. People begin asking themselves questions they rarely say out loud. Why am I not where I thought I would be? Why does everyone else seem happier than me? Why do I feel like I am constantly failing even when I am trying my best? For many, this creates a form of shame that is difficult to identify because it does not come from one single event. It becomes a background feeling that follows them everywhere. They feel like they are not attractive enough, successful enough, disciplined enough, or spiritually strong enough. And because this feeling is so difficult to define, many people simply carry it. The message of divine mercy reached directly into that hidden struggle, but it did not do so through simple motivational phrases or temporary emotional encouragement. It offered something deeper. It challenged the idea that a person's value depends on their ability to perform perfectly. The video highlighted a distinction that many people had forgotten. There is a difference between being worthy of love and feeling worthy of love. These are not the same thing. Many people spend years trying to become someone who finally deserves acceptance. They believe that if they can eliminate enough weaknesses, accomplish enough goals, or fix enough problems, then they will finally feel valuable. But the message argued that this approach creates an endless cycle because perfection is something no person can achieve. The question is not whether someone has reached a level where they deserve mercy. The question is whether they are willing to receive it. This idea became especially powerful among viewers who were carrying private fears about being exposed. Many people admitted that they were afraid if others truly knew what was happening behind their carefully controlled public image, they would be rejected. They worried about their hidden struggles, their private failures, their weaknesses, and their regrets. They feared that being fully known would mean being completely abandoned. But the message of mercy turned that idea around. It suggested that the places people try hardest to hide are often the exact places where healing can begin. Mercy is not offered only after someone has successfully covered their wounds. It reaches the wounds themselves. This was one of the reasons the video resonated with people who felt exhausted by the pressure of constantly pretending they were okay. They were tired of trying to maintain an image. They were tired of carrying problems alone, and they were tired of believing that their struggles made them less valuable. Another important part of the message focused on the meaning of trust. Many people have a misunderstanding about faith. They assume faith is something a person either naturally possesses or completely lacks. They think that if they do not feel confident, peaceful, or spiritually strong, then they must not truly believe. But the teaching presented trust in a different way. Trust is not simply an emotion, it is a decision. A person does not always wait until they feel completely certain before choosing to trust. Sometimes trust begins precisely in moments of uncertainty. Sometimes the most genuine act of trust happens when someone is afraid, confused, and unsure of what comes next. This idea was especially meaningful for people living under constant pressure to feel a certain way. Modern culture often tells people they need to feel happy enough, productive enough, motivated enough, and confident enough before they can move forward. But this message offered a different perspective. You do not have to feel completely forgiven before accepting forgiveness. You do not have to feel completely worthy before accepting love. The feeling may come later, it may develop slowly, but the feeling itself is not the foundation. The foundation is the decision to trust. This simple idea created powerful conversations in the comment sections of the video. Many strangers began responding to each other's stories with compassion instead of criticism. People shared personal experiences they had hidden for years, and instead of receiving judgment, they found encouragement. In a surprising way, the online reaction became a small example of the very message being discussed. People who had felt alone discovered that others were carrying similar struggles. People who believed they were the only ones fighting certain battles realized they were not alone. Another reason the message reached younger viewers was because it avoided something they often struggle with: distrust of institutions. Many younger people have complicated feelings toward organized religion. Some have experienced disappointment, hypocrisy, or situations where they felt judged instead of welcomed. For some, the problem was not necessarily a rejection of God. It was a rejection of a version of faith that felt focused only on rules, criticism, and punishment. The video connected differently because it was not primarily presenting an institution. It was presenting a relationship. It focused on the idea of a God who moves toward people instead of waiting for them to become perfect first. That distinction mattered. Many viewers who had distanced themselves from religion began reconsidering what they had actually walked away from. They started questioning whether they had rejected God himself or simply a distorted image of God that they had encountered along the way. The message suggested that the God of mercy is not someone waiting for people to fail so they can be punished. Instead, it describes someone who already knows human weakness and still chooses to approach with compassion. This was the emotional turning point for many viewers. The video was not telling them to ignore their mistakes. It was not saying that personal responsibility no longer mattered. Rather, it was separating accountability from hopelessness. A person can acknowledge their failures without believing they are permanently defined by them. A person can recognize their mistakes without believing their future is destroyed. A person can